I stopped halfway up the stairs, frozen in place. My husband's voice drifted from the bedroom, steady and sharp. "She's nothing but a free maid," he said. The words pierced straight through me. My chest tightened, and the laundry basket shook in my hands. For 4 years I had carried meals, medicines, and hope up these stairs, always believing in his recovery. But when I reached the doorway, what I saw nearly made me collapse. Mark was standing, not leaning, not struggling, fully upright beside the bed, phone pressed to his ear, laughing at something said on the other end. His legs, the same legs I massaged night after night, praying for sensation, held his weight effortlessly. "Don't worry, babe," he continued, still facing away. "She has no idea. A few more years, and everything will be secured. Then we'll finally be together." The basket slipped from my numb hands. Fresh laundry scattered across the hallway floor like snow. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't think. 8 years of marriage, a career given up, dreams abandoned, a life rebuilt around his supposed suffering. All of it a lie. And I knew then I would make sure he paid for every single day of deceit. Before we continue, share in the comments which country you're watching from. We love hearing from our global community. And if this is your first time here, please subscribe. Your support helps us bring you more powerful stories of justice and revenge. Let's continue. "Emily, the physical therapy appointment is at 2. Don't be late." Mark's voice carried across the kitchen as I stood at the counter preparing his breakfast. Same routine, same tone, always reminding me that nothing I did was ever enough. "I know," I said softly, placing his pills beside the plate. "It's already written down. And ask about the new spinal recovery exercises." His words came from the living room, where he sat. I nodded, though he couldn't see. For years of carrying him, bathing him, managing every detail of his life, my back ached from lifting him in and out of the chair. My hands were raw from endless chores. The woman I once was had disappeared. Emily Carter, marketing director, Emily Carter, who dreamed of traveling, Emily Carter, who laughed until her stomach hurt. She was gone the day Mark's car slid on black ice and crashed into a tree. "Don't just stand there," he called. "Bring it here." I carried the tray into the living room and set it beside his wheelchair. He didn't look at me. Not anymore. His eyes stayed fixed on the television as he chewed without thought. "Your mother called," I said. "She wants to visit this weekend." Mark's jaw tightened. "What did you tell her?" "That I'd ask you first." "Good. Tell her yes. And make sure the house is spotless. You know how she is." I knew well. Suzanne Carter moved through our home like a storm, pointing out dust, wrinkled curtains, every flaw in how I cared for her son. Then came her lectures. "Mark needs you, Emily. He's suffered so much. You can't abandon him now. What kind of wife would that make you?" "The kind who wanted to live," I thought silently. But aloud I said, "I'll take care of it." Mark finally looked at me. The warmth in his eyes was long gone, replaced with contempt. "You'd better. And Emily, dress properly when she comes. You've let yourself go." The words stung like a slap. I glanced down at my worn jeans and faded t-shirt. When had I last bought new clothes? When had I last cared about my reflection? "I'll find something nice," I whispered. He turned back to the screen, dismissing me as always. I returned to the kitchen, gripping the counter until my hands ached. The reflection in the window showed someone hollow, drained, defeated, but not finished. Not yet. My phone buzzed. A text from Lily, my childhood best friend, the one person who still remembered the woman I had been. "Coffee later. You sound stressed." I typed quickly before I could second-guess myself. "Yes, I need to get out of here." The coffee shop felt like stepping into another world. Around me, people laughed, sharing stories about work, weekend plans, and movies they'd seen. I sat across from Lily, hands wrapped around a mug of coffee that had gone cold long ago. "You look exhausted," Lily said softly, her concern clear. "When was the last time you did something just for yourself?" I tried to think. "I don't know. It's hard to leave him alone." "What about respite care? Or maybe Suzanne helping out?" A bitter laugh slipped out. "Her help usually means pointing out everything I do wrong. And respite care costs money we don't have. Mark controls all our finances now, every dollar tracked, every purchase questioned. I get a budget for groceries and household needs, but anything beyond that needs his approval. This isn't healthy, Emily, for either of you. He needs me." The words came automatically, drilled into me after years of Suzanne's guilt trips. What about what you need? Lily's question lingered. When had I stopped thinking about that? I made vows. Lily, in sickness and in health, vows go both ways. Is he honoring his commitment to love and cherish you? I thought of that morning's exchange, the constant criticism, the look that told me I was nothing more than a burden. It's hard for him, I said weakly. He's lost so much. Lily reached across the table, covering my hand with hers. You've lost things too, your career, your dreams, yourself. That matters. Tears threatened, but I blinked them away. Crying was a luxury I couldn't afford. Mark hated when I cried. I should go, I said, glancing at my watch. He'll need his afternoon medication soon. Emily, wait. Lily's grip tightened. Promised me something. If things get worse, if you need help, call me, day or night. I nodded, though we both knew I wouldn't. I'd been drowning for so long, I'd forgotten how to reach for help. Still, Lily's words echoed in my head as I drove home. What about what you need? That thought was still with me when I pulled into the driveway and saw Suzanne's car already there. Through the window, I caught sight of her talking to Mark, her hands moving animatedly while he nodded along, occasionally glancing toward the door. They were talking about May. I could feel it. I sat in the car another minute, gathering myself, then went inside with the smile I had perfected over the past 4 years. You're early, Suzanne. What a nice surprise. She turned, sharp eyes scanning me. Emily, dear, you look tired. Are you taking care of yourself? Her tone sounded kind, but I heard the subtext. Are you taking care of my son properly? I'm fine. Just busy with Mark's appointments and therapy. Of course. Such a devoted wife. Her smile never touched her eyes. Mark was just saying how much he appreciates everything you do. I glanced at him. He stared at the television, jaw tight, irritation etched into his face. Can I get you some tea? I asked. That would be lovely. And Emily, Suzanne's voice sharpened. We need to talk about Mark's long-term care plan. My stomach dropped. Long-term care plan. That sounded ominous. In the kitchen, my hands trembled as I set the kettle. Through the thin walls, I caught fragments of their conversation. Not sustainable, other options. What's best for you? The kettle whistled loudly. I poured the tea with mechanical precision, my mind racing. What were they planning? When I returned, Suzanne had moved closer to Mark, the two of them looking almost like conspirators. Sit down, dear, Suzanne said, patting the couch. We have something important to discuss. I perched on the edge, every muscle tense. We've been thinking about Mark's future, she began. His needs will only grow. His needs are fine, I interrupted quickly. I can manage. Of course you can, Suzanne said smoothly. But should you have to? You're still young. You could remarry, start a family, build a new life. The words hit like ice. I don't want a new life. I want this one with Mark. For a brief moment, his eyes met mine. I thought I saw guilt, maybe regret, but it disappeared almost instantly. There are excellent care facilities, Suzanne pressed. Places where Mark would receive professional support around the clock. Facilities, my voice cracked. You want to put him in a home? I want what's best for my son, she said sharply. And right now, that may not be struggling at home with limited resources, limited help, limited everything. We're managing fine. I insisted. Suzanne gave a patronizing smile. Are you, dear? Mark mentioned you've been crying often, that you seem overwhelmed. I stared at him. When had he seen me cry? I always waited until I was alone. Most often in the shower, where the water could mask my tears. I'm not overwhelmed, I told myself. Of course not, Suzanne reassured. But then she pressed, think about it, Emily. Really think, would Mark be better off with professional care? Would you be happier with the chance to rebuild your life? The conversation stretched for another hour, though I barely absorbed a word. All I could picture was Mark watching me, noting every sign of weakness, then reporting back to his mother as if I were some failing employee. After Suzanne left, silence filled the house. Mark had gone to his room for his afternoon nap. I stood in the kitchen, washing teacups on autopilot, my thoughts spiraling. You could remarry, have children, start fresh. Those words should have felt like freedom. Instead, they felt like betrayal against my vows, against the love we once had, against the man Mark used to be before the accident took parts of both of us. I dried the last cup and put it away. Tomorrow, I decided, I would call about respite care options. Maybe a few hours to myself each week would help me think clearly. Maybe I could remember who Emily Carter used to be. But tonight, I would cook Mark's favorite meal and pretend Suzanne's words hadn't cut so deep. I would be the loyal wife even if it was draining the life out of me. Even if, at times, I wondered if that was exactly what they wanted. The house carried a strange quiet that Thursday afternoon. Mark had been unusually pleasant at lunch, almost chatty. He'd even thanked me for the sandwich, something I hadn't heard in months. I should have felt relieved. But instead, unease crept in. I was folding laundry in the hallway when I heard voices. At first, I assumed the television was too loud. Mark often turned up the volume on his afternoon shows, but as I carried his clean clothes upstairs, the voices sharpened and one of them was unmistakably Mark's. I froze on the landing. He was talking to someone, not the TV and actual conversation. But how his phone was on the kitchen counter. I had seen it there when I served him lunch. Don't worry about it, Mark was saying from behind the closed door. She has no idea. My heart lurched. Who was he speaking to? I crept closer, the laundry basket trembling in my arms. For years of pretending, Mark went on, amusement in his voice. You should see her running around like a scared little mouse, doing everything I ask. She's just a free maid. Nothing more. The words struck like ice. The basket slipped from my numb hands, clothes scattering across the hallway floor, but I barely noticed. The lawyer says for more years and everything will be secure, Mark continued. Abandonment laws work in my favor. If I can show she's unstable and unable to handle my care, I'll keep the house. The accounts, everything. And you know what the best part is? I pressed my ear against the door, pulse racing. She actually believes I can't walk. You should see her face when she helps me into bed at night. All that guilt and pity. It's almost too easy. The words hit me like blows. Can't walk. Almost too easy. I know. Mark's voice softened. Just 2 more months, and you can move in. We only need to be patient. She ruined herself. Trust me, babe, by the time I'm finished, Emily won't know what happened. Then came his laugh, cold, effortless. It made my stomach turn. My legs gave way. I slid to the floor, slumped among the scattered clothes. For years of sacrifice, everything I'd given had been nothing but a lie. I pressed my hand over my mouth to hold back a scream. Mark was still talking, his voice drifting in and out about legal timelines, procedures, making sure I appeared unstable. Free maid. The phrase looped in my mind. That's all I had been. To him, I don't know how long I sat there, but eventually the room grew quiet. Then came footsteps. Panic jolted me back. I scrambled to gather the clothes, shoving them into the basket with shaking hands. By the time the doorknob turned, I was standing again, trying to look composed. The door opened. Mark appeared in his wheelchair. Calm and collected. Emily, what are you doing up here? His voice carried that familiar edge, tired, slightly annoyed, the voice of a man who claimed he couldn't walk. I brought your laundry, I managed to say, though my own voice sounded unfamiliar to me. He studied my face. You look pale. Are you feeling all right? I'm fine. Just tired. Maybe you should rest. I can handle things for a while. The irony nearly broke me. He could handle things. He always could. I'll just put these away, I said, nodding toward the basket. Later. Go rest. Doctor's orders. He smiled, the same smile that once made me fall for him. Now, it looked like nothing more than a mask. I nodded and walked to the guest room where I'd been sleeping for the past year. Mark had convinced me it was better, less chance of disturbing him. Easier for me to hear if he needed help at night. Another lie. Closing the door behind me, I sank onto the bed, my hands still trembling. My mind replayed the words I'd overheard. She's clueless, just a free maid. She really believes I can't walk. How long had this deception lasted? Was it all staged from the beginning? Had the accident even been real? I thought back to those first days in the hospital, the doctors explaining his injuries, the prognosis, the endless recovery ahead. They had seemed so convincing. The scans, the consultations, the specialists. But memories could be altered, records could be forged if someone had the right connections and motives. With shaking fingers, I pulled out my phone and texted Lily. Can you come over? It's urgent. Her reply was immediate. On my way. I lay back, staring at the ceiling, trying to absorb the reality my husband was not paralyzed. He was preparing to divorce me, take everything, and he wasn't alone. It had to be Vanessa Moore, the physical therapist who worked with him early on. She had been attentive, dedicated, and I had even been grateful for her care. Another piece clicked into place, the secret calls when I was out, his improved mood after certain appointments, the sudden optimism whenever she was around. She had supposedly stopped coming a year ago. Mark had said her methods had reached their limit. But what if she never really left? What if they just became better at hiding it? A sound downstairs broke my thoughts. The door opened, then closed. Mark's voice called, "Emily, Lily's here." Their voices drifted from the living room, Lily's cheerful greeting, Mark's warm reply. He'd always charmed my friends. To them, he was the devoted husband, bravely enduring disability. If only they knew. I splashed cold water on my face and went downstairs. Lily sat on the couch, purse in hand. One look at me, and her expression shifted. "What's wrong?" she asked. Mark spoke before I could answer. "She's been under the weather. I told her to rest, but you know how she is always pushing. Too hard." His concern sounded perfect, almost rehearsed. If I hadn't heard the truth, I would have believed him. "Maybe some fresh air would help," Lily suggested. "We could take a walk." "Great idea," Mark said easily. "Take your time, I'll be fine here." Of course he wanted us gone. Probably another call to make. "I'll grab my jacket," I said. Outside. Lily waited until we were away from the house before stopping. She grabbed my arm. "Emily, what happened? You look like you've seen a ghost." I glanced back at the home I'd given 8 years of my life to, the place where I had set aside my dreams to care for a man who saw me only as free labor. "I need to tell you something," I said quietly, "but you have to promise not to think I'm losing my mind." Her grip tightened. "I promise." So I told her everything, the conversation I overheard, the lies, the betrayal deeper than I ever imagined. When I finished, Lily was silent for a long time. Then she said exactly what I needed to hear. "We're going to destroy him." 3 weeks later, her living room had become our base. Papers covered the coffee table, a laptop open beside neat stacks of documents, 2 phones charging on the side table. The investigator's report came in. Lily said, sliding a manila folder toward me, "You're not going to like it." I opened it, and the warning made sense immediately. Photographs spilled out Mark and Vanessa at restaurants, walking hand in hand in a park, leaving a motel. In every single image, Mark was upright, moving freely, no trace of the paralysis he claimed for 4 years. "How long?" I asked. Based on the dates, it had been going on for at least 18 months, but Tony suspected it went back further. The motel clerk even remembered seeing them together 2 years ago. 2 years. All that time, I was losing sleep to care for him, massaging his legs, helping him with even the simplest daily tasks, while he was meeting another woman at a cheap motel. "There's more," Lily said, opening her laptop. She pulled up a bank statement. "Remember how you told me he controls all the finances?" I nodded. Mark had always insisted it was simpler that way, just one person handling everything. Fewer mistakes. "He's been moving money, Emily, large amounts." On the screen, I saw transfers I'd never noticed before, funds leaving our joint accounts and ending up in accounts I didn't recognize. Over 3 years, tens of thousands had vanished. "Where is it going?" I asked. "Offshore accounts, Swiss banks, places that would make it nearly impossible for you to claim anything in a divorce." My stomach turned. He had been planning this for years. "And it gets worse," Lily continued, pulling up another document. "A friend of mine ran a check on his medical records. The follow-up reports don't match what his doctors originally recommended." "What do you mean?" "His neurologist advised more physical therapy and even experimental treatments, but according to the insurance files, Mark declined most of them. He specifically requested to be classified as permanently disabled." The truth was forming an ugly picture I could hardly bear to see. "He planned this from the beginning," I whispered. "It looks that way," Lily replied. "The question is, what do we do about it?" I stared at the photos scattered across the table. Mark smiling with Vanessa, Mark walking easily across a parking lot, Mark being the man I once loved, just not with me. "I want him to lose everything," I said quietly. "That's the right mindset. But we have to be careful. If we act too soon, he could disappear with all the money." She was right. Mark was calculated, manipulative, and years ahead in planning. But he had one weakness: his arrogance. He believed I was completely unaware, just a caretaker who would never push back. It was time to prove him wrong. "What's the plan?" I asked. Lily gave a cold smile. First, we document everything. Every lie, every transaction, every manipulation. Then we wait for the perfect moment. Men like Mark always get overconfident. When he slips, we'll strike. Over the next hour, we shaped our strategy. Lily had connections, lawyers, investigators, people experienced in dealing with men like Mark. My role was to keep pretending, to remain the devoted wife while secretly gathering evidence. The hardest part was returning home and acting as if nothing had changed. Mark was in the living room when I walked in, doing his evening exercises meant to preserve muscle tone in his supposedly useless legs. "How was your visit with Lily?" he asked, casually, without looking up. "Fine, we just talked." "Good. You need friends. It's important to keep relationships outside caregiving." The way he said it made my skin crawl, as if he cared about my well-being, when in reality he was the reason I had isolated myself. "Mark," I began carefully, "I've been thinking about what your mother said about care facilities." He stopped and looked at me. "What about them? Maybe she's right. Maybe you'd be happier somewhere with professional staff." For just a moment, his expression hardened before the mask of the concerned husband slipped back into place. "Emily, we've discussed this. I want to be here with you. We're a team. I know, but I worry I'm not giving you the best care. Someone trained might do better. I don't want anyone else caring for me." Of course, no one else would do it for free while he drained our savings. "Okay," I said softly. "I just want what's best for you." "I know you do," he replied, squeezing my hand. "That's why I love you." The words should have comforted me, but instead, they felt toxic. That night, I lay awake in the guest room, listening as Mark whispered into his phone, likely to Vanessa planning their future, while I continued as his caretaker. I opened my phone and scrolled through the evidence Lily had gathered: bank records, medical files, investigator notes. Mark thought he was untouchable, but he had left a trail far too obvious. His biggest mistake was underestimating me. For years, he trained me to be invisible, to anticipate his needs, to move through life like a shadow, but he never realized I had been watching him just as closely as he manipulated me. Tomorrow, I would begin the final stage of our plan, the stage where Mark Carter learned that even unpaid labor comes with a price. And the bill was overdue. "Think we should have a party," I announced at breakfast. Mark froze, his fork halfway to his mouth. "A party? For our anniversary?" It had been 4 years since the accident, 4 years of pushing through together. The words felt bitter, but I forced my tone to stay light. I suggested that maybe it was time to celebrate how far we'd come. Mark slowly set down his fork, his expression calculating, trying to figure out my motive. "You know I don't like being around crowds," he said. "It's humiliating sitting in this chair." Exactly the response I expected. "Not a big gathering," I reassured him. "Just close friends. Lily, maybe a few others. Your mom, of course. Only people who truly care about us." "I don't." "No, please, Mark," I pressed, letting just a hint of emotion crack my voice. "I've been feeling so isolated. It would mean a lot." His expression softened, not from concern for me, but because my sadness played neatly into his version of me as unstable and fragile. "All right," he said at last. "If it's important, but keep it small, of course. Maybe Saturday afternoon, I'll make your favorite dishes." "That sounds nice." For a brief moment, when he smiled, I remembered why I had once fallen in love with him: before the lies, before the control, before he reshaped me into someone I barely recognized. That memory hurt more than the betrayal itself. After breakfast, I called Lily. "It's happening," I told her. "Saturday. Good. I'll handle the calls. Everyone will be there. Everyone, including the private investigator, the divorce lawyer Suzanne Carter, and 3 of our closest friends who believed I was a saint for devoting myself to a disabled husband." They were about to learn the truth. The week disappeared in a blur of preparation. I scrubbed the house, cooked Mark's favorite meals, arranged flowers. To anyone watching, I looked like a loyal wife organizing a celebration of survival through hardship. Mark, meanwhile, grew increasingly at ease. I overheard his hushed calls more than once, his tone soft, even playful. One afternoon he laughed and said, "Just a few more months, babe, then we're free." Free, the word cut deep, but not for the reason he thought. Saturday morning arrived, gray and damp, fitting weather for what was ahead. I was finishing the food when I heard a car pull into the driveway. Through the window, I saw Suzanne step out with a covered dish in hand. "Your mother's here," I called. "Great. Can you help me get set up in the living room?" I want to sit by the window. I supported most of his weight as he transitioned into the chair. His groans of pain, well rehearsed, his grip on my shoulders dramatic. His act was flawless. Had I not known better, I would have believed it myself. Suzanne swept inside with her usual energy, kissed his cheek, then studied me carefully. Emily, you look tired. Are you taking your vitamins? I'm fine, Suzanne. Thank you for coming. Of course, though I'm surprised you wanted to mark this anniversary. She gestured vaguely toward Mark's legs, as if the word disability was too sharp to speak aloud. It's important to recognize what we've endured, I said evenly, and how we've grown. Over the next hour, more guests arrived. Lily came with the attorney, introduced as her friend Sarah. The investigator blended in as a neighbor, dropping off a casserole. Tom and Janet brought wine and sympathetic smiles. Mark played host effortlessly, recounting his recovery, praising my role as caregiver. He was charming, gracious, inspiring. His audience absorbed every word. Emily's been extraordinary, he said, holding my hand. I don't know how I'd have managed without her. Janet dabbed her eyes. You two are such an example, the way you've faced everything together. She's given up so much, Suzanne added. Her career, her social life, everything. For Mark, I haven't given up anything, I replied softly. Just doing what any wife would do. Mark squeezed my hand. See, that's why I love her. The words twisted inside me, but I smiled and squeezed back. By mid-afternoon, I slipped into the kitchen under the excuse of checking food. Lily followed close behind. How are you holding up? She whispered. I feel sick, I admitted, listening to the hum of his lies from the other room. It's almost over. Just a little longer. Are you sure about the timing? Tony confirmed it this morning, she said. Vanessa arrives at 4:30. She believes Mark's alone. He told her you were visiting your sister for the weekend. My sister lived 3 states away. I hadn't seen her in 2 years. And the recording equipment, all set. Everything will be captured. I nodded, inhaled deeply. 1 more hour of playing the devoted wife. Then Mark would experience what it felt like to watch his world collapse in front of the people he cared about. We returned to the living room, where he was entertaining Tom with a story about his latest therapy session, pure fabrication, since he had quit months ago. The progress has been slow, Mark explained, but the doctors assured us there was still hope. Emily never gave up on me, he added. I felt the weight of everyone's eyes on me, filled with admiration for my dedication. If only they knew the truth. At 4:20, I stood and stretched. I should get started on the kitchen, I said. Let me help, Janet offered. No, please stay with Mark. I'll just be a few minutes. I walked into the kitchen and waited. Through the window, I spotted a silver sedan pulling into the driveway. Vanessa right on schedule. My pulse raced as I heard her unlocking the front door with the key. Mark had clearly given her. From the living room came Mark's voice, sharp and panicked. Vanessa, what are you doing here? You said Emily was out of town for the weekend, she replied, confused. Whose cars are these? Oh my God. I returned to the living room just as Vanessa appeared in the doorway. She was striking, tall, blonde, and confident. Everything I once had been before. For years of serving as Mark's unpaid caretaker had worn me down. She froze at the sight of the room full of guests. But Mark sat rigid in his chair, face pale. I'm sorry, Vanessa stammered. I didn't realize you had company. I should leave. Wait, I said evenly. No need to go on our account. Mark, aren't you going to introduce us to your friend? Everyone stared in silence. Suzanne looked bewildered. Our friends exchanged uneasy glances. Lily sat perfectly still, her phone in her lap, recording everything. This is Vanessa, Mark muttered, his voice strained. My physical therapist, from before. Former physical therapist, Vanessa corrected quickly. I was just dropping off some old equipment. What equipment? I asked pleasantly. I meant, she faltered. Interesting, I continued, that a former therapist has a key to our home. The room went still. Everyone sensed the tension, though they didn't yet understand it. Mark's hands clutched the chair arms tightly. Emily, maybe we should talk about this privately, he muttered, double quotes. Oh, I think our guests will find this conversation very enlightening, I said. Especially since we're gathered to celebrate your recovery. I walked behind Mark's chair, resting my hands on it like the picture of a supportive wife. Tell me, Vanessa, your professional opinion, how would you rate Mark's progress? His mobility, specifically. I'm not sure what you mean, she stammered. Well, when you treated him, He was completely paralyzed from the waist down, correct? Unable to stand, walk, or support his own weight. Vanessa glanced nervously at Mark, then back at me. That was his initial diagnosis. Yes, and in your expert opinion, would a man with that extent of spinal cord damage ever fully walk again, even after 4 years? The question hung heavy in the air. Mark's breathing quickened, his knuckles white against the chair. Recovery varies, Vanessa said weakly. Sometimes there can be unexpected improvements. Unexpected improvements, I echoed. Like standing, walking across a room, maybe even walking to a motel. Suzanne gasped. Janet's wineglass slipped and shattered on the floor. Emily, Mark snapped, his voice sharp with warning. What are you doing? I'm asking the questions I should have asked 4 years ago, I replied calmly. I looked around the room at the stunned faces. I made an interesting discovery recently. Would you all like to hear it? No one spoke, but no one left either. They sat, frozen, waiting. 3 weeks ago, I was taking Mark's laundry upstairs when I heard his voice. He was on the phone, laughing, talking animatedly. The strange thing was, when I reached his door, I saw him through the crack. Mark's face turned ashen. Emily, stop. He was standing, I said firmly. Not leaning, not struggling. Standing upright, beside his bed, laughing about his free maid who was too blind to realize he'd been lying for 4 years. The silence was crushing. Suzanne covered her mouth. Tom and Janet stared at Mark in disbelief. That's impossible, Suzanne whispered. The doctor said a lot, I interrupted, but Mark refused. Most recommended treatments. He insisted on being declared permanently disabled. I glanced at my husband, now shrinking into his chair as though to disappear. Isn't that right, Mark? You're having some kind of breakdown, Mark said, his voice unsteady. The stress of caring for me, it's too much. You're imagining things. I laughed, the sound cutting through the air. Am I imagining the bank statements, Mark? The ones showing you funneled over $200,000 into offshore accounts? Am I imagining the motel receipts, the restaurant bills, the photos? I nodded at Lily, who pulled a manila folder from her purse and handed it to Suzanne. Go ahead, I said. Look through them. Suzanne opened the folder with shaking hands. The first photo showed Mark and Vanessa walking hand in hand through a park. Mark looked normal standing, moving, smiling. Suzanne's face collapsed. Mark, what is this? She asked. Mom, I can explain. Can you? I said firmly. Can you explain why you've been meeting Vanessa for more than 2 years? Can you explain why you've been walking around just fine while I've been sleeping on a cot in the guest room, terrified to leave you alone, even for an hour? More photos circulated. Mark at restaurants, Mark getting into cars, Mark acting like the man I once loved, just not with me. For years, I said, my voice unsteady, though I tried to stay composed. For years of my life, I gave up my career, my friends, my dreams. I turned myself into a shadow, because I thought you needed me. Tears streamed down my face, but I let everyone see what their beloved Mark had done. But you never needed me, did you? You just needed someone naive enough to take care of you while you built a new life with your girlfriend. Vanessa started edging toward the door, but Tom moved to block her. I don't think so, he said calmly. You should stay and hear this. Mark tried one last defense. This is a misunderstanding. Emily's been under enormous stress. Stand up, I said suddenly. What? You heard me? Stand up. Emily, you know I can't, I shouted, my voice cutting through the room. The order was so sharp, so unexpected, that Mark's body responded before his mind caught up. He pushed himself up, legs tensing to support his weight. He stopped halfway, but it was too late. Everyone saw it, the instinctive movement of a man whose legs worked perfectly well. The room erupted. Suzanne sobbed, Janet cursed, Tom glared with open disgust. Lily quietly recorded everything on her phone. You liar, Suzanne whispered. You manipulative liar. What have you done to her? Mark sank back down, dropping the act completely. You don't understand, he muttered. Emily and I weren't working. We haven't been happy in years, so instead of divorcing her, you decided to torment her, Tom said, his voice cold. You turned her into your servant, stole her money, and cheated on her. The marriage was already over, Vanessa added, finally speaking. Mark was trapped. Divorce would have cost him everything, so he took it first. Very noble, Lily remarked. Still recording. I wiped my face and looked around at the people who had watched me give up my life for a lie. Some looked horrified, others ashamed that they had never questioned Mark's story. "He's your son," I said quietly. "You love him." "I do love him," Suzanne replied, "but I don't like who he is. And I won't pretend anymore that what he did can be excused." We sat in silence for a moment. Then Suzanne asked, "Do you regret it, exposing him the way you did?" "Do you mean, do I regret humiliating him in front of everyone?" "Yes." "No," I said firmly. "He humiliated himself. I just stopped protecting his lies." Suzanne nodded. "Good. He relied on your kindness, your willingness to shield him when he didn't deserve it. I'm glad you finally chose yourself." After she left, I sat alone in my apartment, thinking about choices. For 4 years, I had chosen to believe, to trust, to sacrifice. At the time, they felt like the choices of a devoted wife, but in truth, they were the choices of someone taught that her worth came from serving others, not from who she was. Now, I made different choices, work that fulfilled me, friendships built on equality, a home that reflected who I was, small choices, daily choices, that built a life truly my own. My phone rang. The caller ID showed a number I didn't know. Emily Carter, Consulting. I answered. "Miss Carter, this is Rebecca Martinez from the State Attorney General's office. We're investigating a case of financial elder abuse, and your name came up as someone who might help us understand the victim's mindset." "Of course," I said. "How can I help?" The victim is an 84-year-old woman. Her grandson convinced her he was disabled and had her manage his finances. She gave him over $300,000 before a neighbor grew suspicious. My heart broke for her, another person punished for loving someone unworthy. "When can we meet?" I asked after arranging the appointment. I walked to my window and looked out at the city. Somewhere, an elderly woman discovered that the person she trusted most had betrayed her. Elsewhere, a man believed he could exploit kindness without consequence. He was mistaken. They all were. I had spent 4 years learning how to shrink myself, how to blend into the background, how to become whatever someone else wanted me to be. But I also learned patience. I learned how to observe, to collect details quietly. Mark had taught me to move like a ghost. What he never realized was that ghosts don't vanish, they linger. My laptop pinged with a new email. Another woman, another account of betrayal and deceit. Another chance to remind someone they deserved better. I cracked my knuckles and began typing. "Thank you for reaching out. The first thing you need to understand is this. What happened wasn't your fault. The second thing is just as important. This doesn't have to be the end of your story. Let's talk about writing a new chapter." Outside, sunlight poured through my window. Inside, I finally felt awake, with work that mattered waiting for me. The courtroom was crowded. In the front row, 3 women sat, nervous yet resolute. Behind them, families and friends who came to show support. At the back, reporters ready to cover what had become known as the disability fraud ring trial. I sat in the witness area, waiting to be called. At the defense table sat Mark, alongside his lawyer, looking thinner and older than I remembered. Prison had not treated him well. "The prosecution calls Emily Carter to the stand," the attorney announced. I walked to the witness box, raised my right hand, and swore to tell the truth. After everything I'd endured, it was the simplest promise I had ever made. "Miss Carter," the prosecutor began, "you were married to the defendant for 8 years, 4 of which he claimed to be paralyzed from a car accident. Can you tell the court how this affected your daily life?" I glanced around the courtroom before speaking. "Your Honor, for 4 years, I believed I was caring for a disabled man who relied on me to survive. I gave up my career, cut ties with friends, and spent nearly every hour taking care of him. I slept on a cot in the guest room so I could hear him at night. I bathed him, dressed him, lifted him in and out of wheelchairs and beds. I did it because I loved him, and because I thought he had no one else." I paused, locking eyes with Mark. What I didn't know was that he could walk just fine when I wasn't home, that he was seeing another woman, stealing money from our accounts, and planning to have me declared mentally unfit so he could take everything we'd built together. The prosecutor guided me through the timeline, the discoveries, the investigation, and eventually the divorce. Then we moved to what happened after. "After your divorce, did you have any contact with the defendant?" "No direct contact. But, about a year later, Rebecca Martinez reached out." I gestured to one of the women in the front row. She found my name online in connection with articles about financial abuse in marriages. She was in a relationship with Mark and had begun to suspect he wasn't actually disabled. What advice did you give her? I told her to trust her instincts and to document everything. I helped her connect with a private investigator and a lawyer. When she decided to confront him, I made sure she had support. The prosecutor nodded. I testified for 2 hours, outlining the emotional and financial abuse, the manipulation, and the way Mark weaponized women's compassion against them. During cross-examination, Mark's lawyer tried to portray me as a bitter ex out for revenge. I remained calm, answering only with facts and documented proof. Miss Carter, the defense attorney pressed, isn't it true that you've built a business by portraying yourself as a victim, that you profit from telling this story? I met his gaze. I built a business helping women rebuild their lives after betrayal. If that's what you call profiting from my story, then yes, I'm proud of that work. When I stepped down, Rebecca Martinez testified. The jury deliberated less than 3 hours before returning with a verdict, guilty on all counts. Outside the courthouse, Rebecca embraced me. Thank you, she whispered, for helping me realize I wasn't crazy. You were never crazy, I told her. You were dealing with someone skilled at making you doubt yourself. A reporter approached with a microphone. Miss Carter, what would you say to other women who might be in similar situations? I thought for a moment, then looked directly into the camera. Trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, it likely is. Document everything. Surround yourself with people who believe you. And remember this, the person who claims to love you should never make you feel small, confused, or worthless. Real love doesn't demand you disappear. That evening, I sat in my actual office now, with employees and a waiting list of women seeking help to rebuild their lives. On my desk sat a photo from Rebecca's wedding. She had married a man who cherished her exactly as she was, who celebrated her strength rather than exploiting her kindness. 6 years earlier, I had been a ghost in my own life, fading more each day. I once thought my story was about sacrifice, about proving myself worthy of love. But that wasn't the truth. My story was about realizing that love should never cost you your identity. It was about understanding that the people who hurt you can end up showing you who you're meant to be. It was about discovering that the woman strong enough to endure 4 years of lies was also strong enough to build something new from the ashes. Mark once called me a free maid, as if that made me worthless. He was wrong about the worth part, but he was right about one thing. I was free and I was only just beginning.